Let me start by saying, I think one of the things that worries me a great deal is that I think as a country, we don't understand South Africa in the same way. I think we carry in our heads different South Africans. And hence come with different solutions of whatever the challenges are. Take this notion of 30 years of democracy. What has happened during these 30 years? I think one of the fascinating things about these 30 years is what has happened, differences in the different periods within these 30 years. There is a gentleman in South Africa, I'm quite sure that he's now fed up with me because I keep quoting him. This is the CEO of the Institute of Race Relations, Dr. John Andres. Last year, Dr. Andres gave a speech somewhere in the US about the future of South Africa. I think all of us should read that speech. It's very interesting and very educative about 30 years of democracy in South Africa. And Dr. Andres says this, that you can divide this history of 30 years into 3 ages. He calls it ages. As age 1, age 2, and age 3. And says age 1 is from 1994 to 2007. And age 2 is from 2008 to 2022. And now we are drifting towards the conclusion of age 3. So Dr. Andres says, if you look at age 1, the country is going up all the time. He says if even you take the number of people employed, in 1994 you got 8 million people employed. By 2008 it's 14 million. To contest this assertion that is made, that this was a period of jobless growth. Because in fact there's enormous job creation during this period. Levels of unemployment dropped during this period. All manner of positive things. He gives all the detailed socio-economic figures to show this upward process. That's what he calls age number 1. Then as I was saying, he says age number 2 is from 2008 to 2022. And you have the direct opposite happens. So in these 30 years of democracy, we start off going this way, and from 2008 we could start going the opposite direction. So next time you hear somebody saying, you've had this terrible 30 years of democracy, they are not telling the truth. They are not talking about South Africa, they are talking about another country. And you can see why, one of the reasons, why from 2008, some of the socio-economic figures went downwards. Because I'm sure all of us will remember that 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009 was this period of the global financial crisis. Started with the crisis in the US banks, affected the whole world, impacted on us here. During that period, job losses started happening. This is an exogenous impact on South Africa of the global economy, which is shrinking, and therefore, in terms of our exports and all of that, they get impacted upon by that. So I'm saying you can therefore see one of the reasons why from 2008, in terms of those socio-economic figures, you would see a downward trend. But I don't think that is the entire explanation for this change. Because one of the puzzling things about this paradigm, as explained by Dr. Andres, is during age one, the national government here is the ANC. During age two, national government is the same party. So question arises, what happened that the same party is able to lead the country in this very positive way during age one and leads the country in the opposite direction in terms of age two? That's a puzzle, that's a conundrum. If it was a change of party, another party took over, then we can explain it. But it's the same party. What happened? So I'm saying when we talk about Temsile, about 30 years of democracy, I think this is part of what we've got to take on board. That what Andres is saying is correct. Is factually correct. One of the things that Andres does not discuss, because he was not discussing that particular issue, is that it's during this age one that we adopt our current constitution, 1996. And part of what happens during that first period is that we then put in place all the institutions that are required of this constitution. So whether you're talking constitutional court or public protector or the commission on gender and so on, gender issue and so on, all of these institutions, including the laws and regulations, come during this period. So this is a period, age number one, according to Dr. Andres, not only of socio-economic progress, but also the very entrenchment, the definition of democracy in this country comes during this period. Challenges, even with regard to that, come during age number two. I think this is a distinction that we need to make. Even in the context of voting on the 29th of May, I think we need to understand that context in order to be able to know who are we voting for. Who are these people? I am sure that all of us in this hall being very educated people, I'm sure all of us have read the report of the Newent Commission on SARS. Comrade President, I'm sure you've read it. You remember, colleagues, that what happened was, again, we're back to this age 1 and age 2. There was a certain period when the South African revenue was outperforming itself in terms of collections. We would always see this thing that there would be a forecast to say that SARS will collect R1 billion this year. At the end of the financial year, it's R1 billion plus. For a number of years, it was like this. And then during age 2, it went the opposite direction. SARS started underperforming. So that raised a question. Clearly there is something wrong. What is wrong? That's how the Newent Commission of Inquiry, Judicial Commission, was appointed by President Ramaphosa to answer this question: what has gone wrong? I don't know if there's anybody here who would like to help me to say what does the commission say? I'm looking for a hand. The Newent Commission says, obviously I'm summarizing, that some people took a decision to destroy the institution. Now all of us will recall that what has happened during for instance, the proceedings of the Zondo Commission. There's been a big focus on the matter of looting. For instance, the state corporations, whether it's Denel or Eskom or the Transnet and so on, a lot of looting. The Gupta brothers and all of that. In this case of SARS, there was no looting. The Newent Commission says there were people who took a decision to destroy the institution. That's a very remarkable statement in my view. Because SARS is responsible for 95–98% of state revenues. You destroy SARS, you destroy the democratic state. And yet there were people who took a decision to do exactly that. So the Newent Commission report, which I'm sure all of us have read, gives in great detail what is it that happened to destroy this institution. In reality, the alarm sounded by the underperformance in terms of revenues was because of the success of the program to destroy the institution. So in that sense, the people who had taken the decision to destroy the institution, they also provided the key to alert all of us to say there's something that's going wrong, which was what led to the formation of the Newent Commission. Now some of us, after reading the Newent Commission report, one of the things that stood out was the absence of looting. Because here's the state agency, it collects all these billions of rand. And you would think that one of the targets that would be to steal. No, the intention was not to steal, but to destroy the institution. I think that tells us something. How do we explain that? That there would be people who would deliberately set out to seek an outcome of that kind. These are obviously people who are hostile to the very existence of that democratic state. They don't want it to succeed. So they intervene. If we take away these revenues, it won't be possible for the state to succeed. I'm saying it must be that there are people, that those people were people who didn't like our democracy and wanted something else. I think what the importance of that Newent Commission report is that it actually communicated a very important message which all of us in South Africa should understand. Exactly this central point, that there were certain people in the country who deliberately set out to destroy this democratic state. Therefore, it's not everybody who celebrated 1994. There's certainly, to some of our fellow citizens, 1994 represented a defeat. And they did not accept that it's going to be a defeat. So it was a temporary defeat for them, but they knew that in time we will win. The message I'm saying, colleagues, it stands out, is very stark in the Newent Commission report. But I know the majority of us in this room here are hearing what I'm saying as new news. Yeah. Fortunately, it's not fake news. And part of the reason you are hearing it as new news is because for some reason, which I can't understand, the content of that report has not been widely reported in our media. It hasn't. The Zondo Commission continued, looked again at the SARS issue. They looked at the outcome of the Newent Commission of Inquiry on SARS, and they said, we agree with what that commission says and its outcomes. But we are going to look at the same question again because it's imperative in terms of our own mandate. And they did. The Zondo Commission looked at the SARS matter, continued from where Newent had left off. And now this is one of the extraordinary conclusions in the Zondo Commission report. That as all of us know, the Zondo Commission report has been now in the public domain for what, 2 years or something? The Newent one has been on the public domain since 2018. And clearly all of us have read it, the Newent report. And I'm quite sure all of us have read the Zondo Commission report. The Zondo Commission report, among its conclusions on the SARS matter, says one of the people who played a leading role in the effort to destroy SARS was the President of the Republic of South Africa. That's a strange conclusion. Fortunately, I was not president at the time. Zondo Commission says, in terms of all of the evidence that we've received, one of the things that stands out is that the President of the Republic made certain that he was one of the leading people in terms of the SARS processes and in terms of the ESCOM processes. It's in the Zondo Commission report, it's in the public domain. And yet again, we have this strange phenomenon. Comrade President, that what I'm now saying about what the Zondo Commission says about who was responsible for this attempt to destroy SARS includes the President of the Republic. That is new news. It isn't. And of course, you know who the President was. And it says so in black and white, Jacob Zuma was part of the leadership in the process to destroy SARS. That's not my opinion. I'm telling you what the Zondo Commission says. I'm telling you what the Zondo Commission says. Now that's a bit of a conundrum. That you would have the President of the Republic of South Africa participating in a process to destroy the institution that gives him the means to govern. That's a kind of contradiction. The contradiction that then raises a question. Who indeed is this president? Because there is no way you are going to be able to square the circle that the President of the Republic of South Africa acts to destroy the South African Revenue Service. Either the Zondo Commission is entirely wrong, or we are dealing with somebody who is entirely wrong. I'm saying, colleagues, that I think this is part of the process of the understanding of what Andres describes as age 1 and age 2. And what happened during these two ages, which are opposite to each other. I think many of us in the room, perhaps with the exception of the panelists, are old enough to remember when we first had our first national power cut, when the country went blank because of ESCOM, what is called load shedding, the national. The first time it happened was in January 2008. You'd remember that even the mines had to shut down for a whole week. Again, apart from our panelists here, the older people would remember that at that time I was president. And the previous month of December 2007, either December or November 2007, I'd apologized publicly, because what had been happening is that you had regional instances of load shedding. So in November, December 2007, I apologized for that. So on behalf of the government, we apologize for this, because it's the reason for it is because there are certain things the government should have done and did not do. We delayed. And hence this apologies to the nation. I repeated that in the State of the Nation Address 2008. You can read it up, it's on the internet. So, National Power Cut, January 2008. Many years later, I read in the newspapers that there's a report that has leaked which discusses the power failure of January 2008. And in reality, I was very wrong to apologize. Because what ESCOM did, the practice within ESCOM at the time, was that it had its own internal monitoring process about internal performance of the power stations. And the regulation was that each power station must have a minimum of 22 days supply of coal immediately with it, and not to go below that. So the internal monitoring system kept an eye on that. And already during December 2007, that monitoring system was telling the power station managers, you are running out of coal, replenish. And they didn't. What caused the power failure of January 2008 was the power stations ran out of coal. Because the power station coal managers at each station didn't respond to this alert from within this organization saying replenish. They didn't run out of coal, so you can't produce electricity in a coal-fired power station without coal. I saw this thing in a report in a newspaper. It was a leak. So naturally, as you'd imagine, I'm very interested in all of this. This was a leak from a report of a special investigation unit. There was an SIU that had been commissioned to study certain things at ESCOM. That SIU reported to the president in 2017 and said what I'm saying, that the reason for the power failure in January 2008 was easily avoidable. All you needed to do was to replenish the coal supplies at the power stations, that's all. The SIU report says, but they didn't do it, for whatever reason. That SIU report was never released publicly, to this day, it's still not been released. But as you would imagine, I have some friends in high places. So I asked them, I said, look, I've read in the media that there is such an SIU report. And it's in the office of the president. Can I please get a copy? And they gave me a copy. And indeed, the report says what I've just said. Now, colleague, I'm talking too long. But I'm trying to talk about 30 years of democracy. Question was raised very legitimately about ESCOM. I'm saying the first national power failure at ESCOM had absolutely nothing to do with the narrative that is told. No, this was failure of government. It had nothing to do with failure of government. It was a deliberate decision from within the organization to produce that crisis. And one of the immediate consequences of that is, according to the procedures at Eskom, they declared an emergency. An emergency meant that in terms of coal, for instance, you didn't have to put out tenders and all of that. You just go and buy coal where it is available. That immediately doubled the price of coal. Immediately. And that report will also say some of those station managers pocketed something from that. I'm giving you, colleagues, an instance of part of what has been happening. I'm saying what the Newent Commission particularly alerted us to, that there were some people in this country who did not like this democracy and sought to act in a negative manner to weaken it. I'm talking about Eskom. We take a decision, the government takes a decision in 2004. Whereas we had been saying to Eskom, look, don't build new capacity, generating capacity, for a number of reasons. We changed that and said 2004, okay, please build. That's when the decision was made to build Kusile, Medupi, Ingula, these power stations. 2004. But the record will tell you that the construction of Medupi, the first one to go under construction, started in 2007. So the question that arises in my head, what's the delay? Decision get taken in 2004, implementation starts 3 years later. Why? It's not easy to find an answer to that question in terms of the Eskom reports that you'll see on the internet. But the reason is, in fact, let me say the reason. What happened was that they started to construct Medupi before 2007. Not surprising when the government says 2004, please build. But they had to stop the building, destroy what they had constructed, because the companies that were paid and commissioned to prepare the building site for the building of Medupi didn't do their work properly. It's called geotechnical work. They didn't do their work properly. The result of which is when the construction of Medupi started, it sank. It had to be destroyed, more work done on the site. That delayed the construction of Medupi for 2 years. In my view, that's not an accident. That you'd have companies which normally they are paid, they do this job all the time to prepare sites for construction of whatever, and they mess this one up so badly that it delays construction of Medupi by 2 years. I'm saying I don't think that was an accident. It's consistent with these people who intervened with regard to SARS. They were intervening with regard to the matter of electricity. Medupi, Kusile were supposed to have been completed by 2014. In which case there would never have been this electricity crisis. Kusile is still not completed to this day. Why? Seven years after the construction of Kusile started, 7 years, it was not generating any, whatever you call that unit, of electricity after 7 years. Obviously, this is very embarrassing to anybody. So what ESCOM did was to hire an Indian company, the Tata brothers. Hired the Tata brothers to come and build Unit 1 of Kusile. And the reason they did that is because that company had built another power station in India, which was more or less a replica of Kusile. So they came indeed and they built Unit 1 of Kusile. So at last Kusile was generating electricity. So this company was expecting that their contract would then be extended to build Unit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But ESCOM said to them, no, we can't extend your contract unless you have got a BEE partner. So the Indians wanted to know, we brought 50 engineers and technicians from India, and the rest of the staff is staff at ESCOM that we worked with. When you say we must have a BEE partner, how do you do that? Are there black engineers and technicians who can then come and become our partners? Maybe that's black empowerment. No, that wasn't working because already they had 120, 130 people under mentorship, engineers. Well, in the end, the matter couldn't be resolved of this BEE partner, so the Indians left. They finished their work in 2016. That Unit 1 of Kusile was integrated in the grid in 2017. I'm saying to this day, we have not finished constructing Kusile. And yet it's quite clear, if this business had not popped up of a BEE partner, Kusile would have been completed long time ago. And I'm absolutely certain that whoever said to these Indians, get a BEE partner, it was not out of interest in terms of BEE matters. It was to delay the construction of Kusile. So colleagues, I think you can see where I'm going. In 1994, in our assessment of the situation in the country, we said, I'm talking now about the ANC, we said it's obvious that not everybody in South Africa will be happy with the change that is taking place. Therefore, it's inevitable that there will be an attempt at counter-revolution. It's inevitable. And we thought that attempt would come via violence. There would be bombings and be assassination of people and all that. And indeed, we were quite correct. That's what happened. I think you'd recall people got arrested, then the Buremach and all that. I don't know if they're out of jail now. We set off some bombs and so on. And in a sense, when the security forces succeeded to do that, our understanding was that, well, this counter-revolution that we had feared, in fact, has been dealt with. And we were quite wrong. You will see, I'm sure, all of you, again, educated people, there's quite a lot of discussion in the media about what is meant by the National Democratic Revolution. And a lot of opinion here that this is a program that was decided by Lenin in Russia many years ago. It's a communist program and it's stage one towards socialism. You find a lot of that discussion. And that's part of the thinking that informed the counter-revolution. But in this ANC, what is this ANC? This ANC is nothing but a proxy of Moscow. It's a communist front. What it wants to do with South Africa is to reproduce that socialism following the stage one of the National Democratic Revolution. So we must defeat it by all means. I'm talking about the thinking, the ideology between this counter-revolutionary intervention. So what I'm saying, colleagues, in the end, in order to understand this age number 2, according to Dr. Andres, where you then have all of these negatives, none of them are accidental. You cannot have an ANC government performing as it did during age number 1, and suddenly, in age 2, it behaves in the opposite direction. There's been a change somewhere. And that change includes change in the leadership of the ANC. So, when we're talking about, therefore, what is to be done? Temsile said, these ANC breakaways, coalition politics, and all of what do we do about all of that? I'm saying in that context of what's been happening in the country, how do we understand the breakaways? Or just take the MK party. You can't say, I remain a member of the ANC, but I support a party which is going to campaign to defeat the ANC. That doesn't make sense. One of those two things is wrong. So in terms of these breakaways from the ANC, take that breakaway. You can understand that. It is led by the same people who tried to destroy SARS. It's exactly the same people. It is exactly the same people. So you can understand who they are. Or even take the youth. Take the Youth League of the ANC. Got affected by all of this. At some point you have an ANC Youth League which has got its own political platform. It's separate, different from the political platform of the ANC. It can't be ANC Youth League, it must be somebody else's Youth League. What happened? Suddenly you've got, a very popular thing. I think even my comrade president here referred to about land. There's established ANC policy, which is in the Freedom Charter. If you come to me to say, now let's still do something about the land, I'd say, bear in mind what we've said in that Freedom Charter for many decades. The land shall be shared among those who work it. That is a very well thought out position, strategic position with regard to solving a number of issues here. The national question, the land question, how do we handle it? No, somebody pops up. No. Let's take the land and give it to our people. So I say, I belong to the ANC. Who, according to the ANC in South Africa, is not our people? There's nobody who's not our people. That's ANC policy. Somebody else's policy might be very different. But that's why the ANC says this land shall be shared among those who work it, black and white and whoever they are. But I'm saying you have a youth league which is called an ANC Youth League, which has got a very different policy from the ANC on this matter. Is it ANC? It's not. It's a youth league, sure, but a youth league of somewhere else. I'm trying to indicate, colleagues, what has happened, which has produced these two ages that Dr. Andres talks about. Age number one, where everything is going this way, and age number two, when things are going the other direction. Under the same political party. So, I think in terms of our response to all of these challenges about coalitions and so on, the question that we must ask, where do we want South Africa to be? Not where do we want the political parties to be, where do we want South Africa to be? In terms of employment, in terms of everything that we talked about, industrialization and so on. And who will get us there? You'll read all of the election manifestos, all of them without exception. That's all of them say, we will get you there. Whom do you believe? I think there's a major political struggle that has to take place here, in part based on a proper understanding of the state of the nation. Not the state of the nation as we wish it to be, but that it actually is. You take these matters about industrialization, manufacturing, and so on. Leadership, comparison to China. Johan Rupert, very senior business person in the country, did an interview a few years back, I think with Power FM. And Johan Rupert says something which I was very, very glad he said it. He's generally a very honest person. He speaks his mind. And he said there was a certain period in the country, as he describes it, is during this age one. We should have taken advantage of that situation to invest in the South African economy. We didn't. And the reason we didn't is because we were uncertain about its future. Now that's a very senior business leader in the country who says that. At some point I can tell the story now. We talked to the government of China because clothing and textiles here were suffering greatly because of imports from China. As you know, I was saying that to look around, all sorts of items of clothing are made in China. So we talked to the government of China to say, look, this industry of ours is dying because of imports from China. Please do something to stop this flow. I hope the Chinese government won't be angry with me for telling this story. They agreed. They said, all right. So they would intervene to reduce the flow of the Chinese exports to South Africa in order to help South African clothing and stranded data to survive. And then said something which was very, very interesting to me. They said, part of what we will do, we will help your companies to catch up in terms of technology. Because they've fallen way behind in terms of technology in this sector. So that by the time we normalize the situation, they would have caught up with the rest of the world in terms of technological development. What had happened now, because of the thing that Johan Rupert is talking about, of a great reluctance by a major part of the capitalist sector to invest in the South African economy. What had happened in the clothing and industry, in the clothing, in the textile and clothing sector, was that level of investment that dropped. That includes adoption of modern technologies. It was part of this general phenomenon of what COSATU used to call an investment strike. Because in truth, a great part of capital in this country was very uncertain about the future of the country. This miracle that people talked about was too good to be true. One day there will be a big explosion. Therefore, why invest? That's part of the reason for the drop even in manufacturing. That was stage 2, age 2, when you have that phenomenon. During age 1, you have a very different process of investments in this economy and so on, but suddenly it changes. So I'm saying to answer those questions about industrialization, technological development, manufacturing, even leadership, you got to discuss it within that context. Because these questions never arose during age 1. There are no questions about leadership, about this and that and the other, because things were working. These matters arise, about questions arise now because things are going the other way. And that's a challenge we face as South Africans, to grapple with this reality, which has impacted in all elements of national life. You can go through each one of the state corporations, Eskom, Denel, Transnet. What has happened to all of them? And what has happened to all of them is not accidental. It's particular interventions to make sure that this democracy.
Thabo Mbeki was born on June 18, 1942 in the small village of Mbewuleni in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. Growing up in a politically active family, Mbeki was deeply influenced by his father, Govan Mbeki, a prominent anti-apartheid activist and leader in the African National Congress (ANC). Thabo Mbeki's early exposure to the struggle for freedom and justice shaped his future path. Due to his political activities, Mbeki went into exile in 1962, during which he pursued higher education and gathered international experience. He studied economics at the University of Sussex in the United Kingdom and later obtained a master's degree in African Studies from the University of London. Throughout his exile, Mbeki played a crucial role in the ANC international diplomacy, advocating for sanctions against the apartheid regime and mobilizing support for the anti-apartheid movement. During his years in exile, Mbeki rose through the ranks of the ANC, becoming one of the most prominent leaders. He was instrumental in shaping the party's policies and strategies. Following the unbanning of the ANC and the liberation movement in 1990, Mbeki returned to South Africa, ready to help steer the country towards a democratic future. Thabo Mbeki succeeded Nelson Mandela as president of South Africa in 1999, serving until 2008. His presidency was marked by significant economic policies aimed at transforming South Africa's economy. Mbeki pursued policy of economic liberalization, emphasizing market-friendly reforms, foreign investment, and the development of a black middle class. His approach, known as the African Resonance, sought to position South Africa as a leading economy on the continent. On the international stage, Mbeki was a staunch advocate for African unity and development. He played a key role in the formation of the African Union and championed the new Partnership of Africa's Development, which aimed to promote sustainable development across the continent. Mbeki's vision for an African resonance emphasizes the need for African solutions to African problems, fostering economic growth, political stability, and cultural revival. After stepping down from presidency in 2008, Mbeki continued to influence South African and African politics through his work with the Thabo Mbeki Foundation and various international organizations. His legacy is a complex one, marked by significant economic achievements and controversial decisions. Mbeki's visions for a prosperous and self-reliant Africans remain a guiding principle for many. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to like and share your thoughts in the comment box below. Until next time, cheers and have a good one.